This morning, the story of the bomb, Bikini Island, and a long-running fight to go home. These are the Bikini Islanders, but this is not Bikini Island. This is Kili, 500 miles away. The Bikini Atoll is still trying to recover from 12 years of U.S. nuclear bomb testing. Today, the Bikini Islanders are virtual wards of our government. They get handouts of everything, from food to cars. In 1968, about 100 Bikinians went home for 10 years. They worked to resettle their native lands, not knowing they were being exposed to high levels of radiation. Recently, the U.S. government offered $75 million to settle all the claims for damages, including skin cancer and birth defects. The government says that money should cover the damages and the final cleanup of Bikini. The Bikinians disagree. They have until November 1st to appeal. Their story and our pictures come from a new National Geographic Explorer documentary airing this Sunday night on Atlanta Superstation TBS. Jonathan Weiskell, the attorney fighting for the Bikini Islanders, is here on one side, as well as Howard Hills, the attorney for the Reagan administration's interagency group on Micronesia. Good morning, gentlemen. Morning. Mr. Weiskell, $75 million sounds like a lot of money, especially for a couple of thousand islanders. Why aren't you satisfied?
Well, I think when you look at the 42-year history of the Bikinians' exile from their homeland, they are looking at compensation, but most important, they are looking and hoping for a cleanup of their islands. And those two goals are linked. They want compensation for what happened to them. They want compensation for the damage to their islands, for possible health defects, but they want their islands cleaned up. And that is their goal today, and that is not covered by that amount of money, and that amount of money would not come close to fulfilling the goal of a cleanup.
Well, the government did promise they could go back at some point at the time they were moved off the island.
Yes, and
it is more expensive. You cleaned up a neighboring island that cost $120 million. Why do you think $75 million is going to do it?
well, I think that we have to set the record straight on a couple of facts. First of all, in addition to the $75 million that's to be paid to them under the settlement that we have in place, there is an additional $20 million resettlement trust fund that already is in existence and is in possession of the Bikini people. And furthermore, we have an outstanding obligation. We've agreed with them, with the government of the Marshall Islands and with the Bikini people, that we will seek further appropriations as necessary to complete the resettlement process. So it's not just $75 million. In fact, since the people of Bikini were removed from the island in 1946, the United States government has already provided over $119 million in compensation, and we have an additional, we've told them we have a commitment, we will go back for more money as necessary. But the fact of the matter is that under the leadership of Secretary of Interior Hodel and Secretary of State Schultz, we've tried to not just throw money at the problem, but move beyond the stage where Washington bureaucrats decide what's going to happen and where the Bikinians are going to go. And so the requirement for completing this commitment and fulfilling our obligation and keeping our promise to the Bikini people is that we go to Congress and seek appropriations based on an agreement between the Bikinians and the U.S. government on what the final approach to resettlement and rehabilitation of the island will be. And it's Mr. Weiskell's doing his job by expressing impatience with that process, but we really feel that we're very close to being able to meet that obligation.
Do you feel close?
It's hard to say, Boyd. The amount of money, yes, it sounds like a lot. Look at the historical context. The testing at Bikini in the 12-year period from 1946 to 58 cost upwards of $10 to $15 billion in dollars at that time. The cost of a cleanup is a minuscule part of that testing. Even today, we appropriate a tremendous amount of money for underground testing, and the cleanup is just an integral part of finishing up that process at Bikini.
But Mr. Hills says the government's willing to pay for the cleanup. What's your complaint?
I am delighted to hear what Mr. Hills is saying this morning on the Today Show. I would like to get Mr. Hills together with my clients, put down on a piece of paper how we would proceed. We've been litigating for 6.5 years. This is a time when perhaps we can come together and work out some kind of settlement to proceed. But what we're hearing publicly on the media, I think, requires a follow-through both with the executive branch together with Congress, which is going to be ultimately responsible for appropriating the money, to see if we can move forward on a cleanup. It is certainly music to my clients' ears to hear the commitment, but where's the funding? We don't have it.
The commitment's been in writing for 4 years now, but there's a lot of bipartisan support in Congress for meeting this commitment. I think the real story here is that after 40 years, the United States, not out of legal compulsion, but because we are a good and a moral nation, are going to keep our promise to the Bikini people.
All right, thank you very much. Apparently we've reached an agreement here on the Today Show this morning. We'll be back in a moment, but for now, this is Today on NBC.
Live from the nation's capital, BizNet and ESPN present Nation's Business Today for Wednesday, November 23rd, 1989. From our anchor desk, Martin Eckert and Warren Corbett.
During Lech Wałęsa's triumphant tour of the United States, the Solidarity leader appealed repeatedly for U.S. investment in Poland. But even before Wałęsa arrived here, a delegation of 29 American corporations had been touring his country, looking for ways to take advantage of the new opportunities there. The trade mission was organized by the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and our guest this morning is the agency's general counsel, Howard Hills. Howard, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
First of all, with regard to Poland, I think a lot of people might say, is it a little bit early to jump into a situation that's still changing, still developing politically? There's bound to be some insecurities about that.
Well, from a businessman's point of view, I think getting in early has traditionally been something that would be viewed as very desirable, and I think that's the situation that exists, that we believe exists in Poland right now. Obviously, there are some, there's a transition process going on there right now, and OPIC, one of the reasons OPIC has been identified by the president as an appropriate program for Poland is that we help investors deal with the risk issues, but the government there in Poland is committed to making the transition, and OPIC can help investors participate in the early stages of the transition and get their foot in the door when the opportunity is greatest.
Now, the present Polish government may be committed, but, you know, take the worst case. What if Gorbachev falls and the tanks come rolling across the border again? What's the recourse for an American company at that point?
Well, again, that's what OPIC is all about. That's why I think when the roundtable process first started to move forward in Poland and the prospect for reform started to become very real, the Bush administration was out ahead of the game, and the president on April 17th in Hamtramck identified OPIC along with GSP and some other incentives programs as an appropriate U.S. response to the reform process. And OPIC provides political risk insurance, currency convertibility insurance, and we provide investment guarantees that have the full faith and credit of the United States backing the investor. So the point is, OPIC facilitates an investor's decision to take the chances and take the risk and to seek the opportunities, knowing that if there is a reversal, the United States government will be there to make them whole from a commercial or political risk point of view.
For those companies who are willing and in some cases eager to be one of the first in Poland, the question of the red tape involved in dealing with a government ministry that is probably going to be either hidebound in its socialist ways, or in some cases in the Solidarity government, the ministry may be staffed by people so new that they're just finding their way to the restroom.
Well, I think that the good news on that issue, on the red tape issue, is that the government of Poland is very aware of that problem, and they are in earnest addressing it. On the 29th of this month, a presidential mission, which OPIC is supporting very actively, is going to be leaving. It's going to be led by Secretary Yder, and it's going to include Secretary Dole, the Council for Economic Advisors, the head of the Council for Economic Advisors, Mr. Bostic, and Secretary Mosbacher. And they are going there, and they're going to identify the obstacles to investment, the obstacles to the economic restructuring to which the government's committed.
And you think the Polish government is eager to do something about those obstacles that are identified?
They've asked us to, and Ambassador Zeder, who's the head of OPIC, met with Mr. Wałęsa in Gdansk at Solidarity World Headquarters for an hour, and they talked about this. And Mr. Wałęsa made it clear they're open to U.S. investors. Money's to be made in Poland right now, and Mr. Wałęsa, they're not selling their country. They want to buy their country into the world economic system on a competitive basis.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Our time's gone. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.